Welcome to Producing Confidence, a Danos family of companies podcast. Whether it's breaking news from the field, insights on innovation, or behind-the-scenes stories, we're excited to keep you connected and informed. Tune in and join us as we continue producing confidence every step of the way.
Well, thanks for joining us, guys. I'm Samantha Magee with the Danos marketing team, and today we have Renee Piper, who is the Danos Vice President of Marketing, Strategy, and Community Affairs, and Mark Danos, who is owner and CEO of Danos Family Investments, and he is over the foundation as part of that. Is that right?
Correct.
Got it right.
You got it.
Okay, cool. And so today we're going to talk about a recent trip to Ecuador, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So you guys kind of through the foundation, kind of through something different, went on a trip to Ecuador. Tell us about that.
Who's first?
I'm sure it's a lot.
I'll go and then you fill in, and then we'll trade up. So we came into contact with a company called Magee, and they're a food distribution company, and they have their Christian forward company, and they have a Magee Cares, which is like their nonprofit foundation. And through Magee Cares, they do service trips, and they take their employees on them several times a year. And through that connection, they invited Mark and myself to go to Ecuador with them and experience the trip and learn how to lead trips, because we do hope to be able to do something like that here at Danos. And so we got to spend, 4 or 5 days in Ecuador and get to meet the beautiful people there and experience just really poverty. Deep poverty, but beautiful spirits and happy people, and just learning about what it means to serve them and to help them so that they can improve their situation and not just help and walk away and then leave them, right, in that same situation. So trying to make improvements for their lives that would pay benefits for their children and future generations. So what did I leave out?
So what I would add to that, just wonderful opportunity to engage with another organization that's on a similar mission and similar journey as us. Hugely encouraging. We think what we're doing from a purpose standpoint and from a foundation standpoint, we feel like it's pretty unique, right? And it's unique to us, but to get to know an organization like Magee, like as Renee said, it's a faith-forward organization. There are lots of people in the organization from many different faith traditions, but their purpose is very similar to ours. And so they have been on this journey a little bit longer than us, so they're more mature in some areas than us.
How long have they been doing the service trips?
Probably 10 years is what I think. It
That's a
started
long time.
as a vision from their founder, the family member, right, that it was in North Dakota, and there were some Indian reservations, and just had a heart for serving the people. Grabbed one of his employees and said, I want you to help me figure out how to do this. They're a food distribution company. They have excess food. Things change, dates get expired, so they were able to give food. And then through giving food, they realized it was an opportunity to engage people through giving food. And when they engaged people, they saw that there was just significant dividends in terms of culture change and heart impact and relationships and just so many things, that intangible things that they never envisioned or never thought would happen as a result of they were just trying to be generous and be faithful and be good stewards and serve the community around them. And now, 10 years later, started with a couple of people going, they have sent more than 2,000 employees on these mission trips around the world. So they do domestic, they do international, and it's transformed the culture of the company. They use it from a leadership development standpoint. But you can imagine anyone from the CEO down to recent hires have an opportunity to go. They encourage people to go. They pay for it. And the result is significant cultural difference. And not only the impact, maybe the least of which is the impact that they actually have by going, the greater impact is what happens when they come back. And I think we'll probably talk about that. You can go on a trip, and when you think of a trip, there's a start and there's an end. And we were challenged to not think of these as trips. Think of it, I don't know the word they use, it's more of a journey, because you go, you serve, you have an impact, but what happens, the greater impact happens when you come back, when it's life change, heart change, the relationships that are built, and what happens in your own community, your own family as a result of this. So great question, wonderful organization doing some great things that has challenged and inspired us to do things. We're doing some wonderful things through our foundation, but it's just opened our eyes to some great things that we can do as well.
Renee, you mentioned that, it's something that we'd like to bring back to Danos. I'm sure you're still got a million ideas as to what that looks like, but, where are y'all on that journey of what does that at this point? What are you thinking about how that relates to Danos?
Yeah, so Mark and I met last week to just do a download of the trip and share ideas. And you're right, there's a lot of ideas, and we're super excited about it. We're trying to figure out what that looks like, but we've committed to doing our first trip in 2025.
Wow!
So I know that that's going to happen because we're going to hold one another accountable. Mark is seeking out partner organizations for us to work with, like nonprofits that would be in whatever area we would go to that would help facilitate. And I am looking for syllabus of what we would teach and how the progression of the trip would go so that we can have outcomes that we're looking for and that we can work toward that. So that's what we're both working on right now. We're going to come together and then start to put things in place, which I'm so excited about. I can't wait for the first outing, and excitement, nervous, but it's what Mark was saying, it's what happens after. So we did that trip. So now after, we're going to be doing them and have that impact. So it's a ripple effect. And I will add one thing. At Magee, they're a service company. They provide a service just like we do at Danos. And their owner had said, how can we be a service company if we haven't taught people how to serve, or at least given them the opportunity to serve those less fortunate, which was beautiful, right? And of course, service is one of our core values. And I think it facilitates that, right? Okay, this is what service looks like, and how do we meet people where they are and serve them?
Awesome.
Color commentary. So I'll inject something. You think about, we had this wonderful experience. We saw an organization that's doing something different. It's easy to say we're going to chase the shiny object and we're going to change what we're doing to mimic what somebody else is doing. And that's not all what we're trying to do. We see a wonderful impact. We see a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful idea that we can bring in what we're already doing. And I say that we have a wonderful foundation doing some great things. I say that very often. We have a great foundation to the foundation. And we have grown through the years. We're very mature. When I compare and see what we're doing compared to other organizations, I'm really, really encouraged at what we've done over the last 7 years. So when I see an opportunity like Renee shared, how can we bring the service aspect into our organization? What have we done this year? We kicked off a new initiative called Danos ROOTS. And Danos ROOTS is focusing on investing in our employee community. How better can we focus on our employee community by exposing them to the world, exposing them, giving them an opportunity to go and serve and see, and in the process, hopefully come back changed so they can impact their families, they can impact their workplaces. So from our perspective, this absolutely fits and complements what we do. So we're trying to figure out, how is Danos ROOTS going to take root, right, within the Danos organization? What are we going to do? This absolutely fits. I'm looking at some notes here because I brought a notebook on our trip and took some notes, and I was reading through it this morning. But one thing that I'm turning to as we're talking, it says impact starts with authentic relationships with the people right in front of you. So we can think, we want to go chase big things and we want to go do something different, but it starts right here, right in front of us with our own organization. That's Danos ROOTS. And I also wrote, big change starts with the first step, excuse me, and with many more small steps. So our first step, our goal this year is to do one trip this year. That's going to be our first step. And then we'll adjust. We'll see where this takes us, and hopefully, right, we're going to be faithful. We're going to take our first step, and we're going to see where the second step, and we may have to turn this way or shift this way, but I'm confident that this is going to have an impact, and I'm anxious to see how it may not, the end, where we end up may not look like Magee, and that's okay. I'm absolutely, this is going to be our journey, and we're going to make it authentic to us, but I'm excited for the learning that we have brought back and how this will help us have an impact here through Danos ROOTS and through our organization.
Yeah, agree. And I think that stepping out on faith and doing that first step of taking a trip without feeling like we have to have all the answers and this complete perfect vision for how it's going to look. Just doing that and keeping this this curiosity, right, of what did we learn from this? How can we do this differently, better? How can we better serve people, and continuing to evolve to accomplish that?
Yeah, so that's really cool. So we talked big picture, how the relationship Danos. What did y'all do? So tell me like about the trip. You got on a plane, landed in Ecuador, Quito, maybe, I don't know, and then what happened next? What happened on the trip?
Yeah, let me go first,
Yeah.
and then you fill in. We're gonna tag team. So we joined up with Magee. There were 12 people on the trip. There were actually 8 employees from Magee, 2 from Danos, and 2 from another organization called Barnhart. So Magee does. Maybe I said this a minute ago. I said started with 1 trip, and I think I said 35, 36 trips a year. 2,000 employees. They take 400 to 500 people a year on these trips. Because the trips have grown such, they have to train the trainer, if you will. So they have found leaders within the organization that can lead these trips. The organization, the people behind the scenes can't manage, the foundation organization can't manage it alone. So they have found managers, vice presidents, leaders in the organization that are passionate about it, that have been on trips, and they're training them to go. So we were able to join a train the trainer trip, if you will. So these were 8 leaders within the KE organization, very senior people in the organization that have done this. In fact, one was a retiree, retired.
Yes,
Oh,
came
wow.
back to lead
35 or 40
trips.
years experience, and she's so passionate about it in her retirement, she leads these trips. So we traveled to Quito, Ecuador, correct if I'm saying that wrong. And in Quito, we partnered with Magee in Quito. I'm going to get tongue-tied, with an organization that they support. Again, they have a similar goal as us, where they try to establish long-term partnerships. They invest in these organizations, they build long-term partnerships, and they send people year after year after year after year, so they get to see the impact that they're having on locations. So small teams going for small time. And I said a second ago, the bigger impact happens when they return. But when you have many, many trips for many, many years, they have a significant impact, and they're seeing life change in these areas. So the organization that we partnered with was E=H, Education equals Hope. And in Ecuador, there's a lot of poverty. It's very different than the way we see the world, and there's poverty in the US, but this is a very different level of poverty. So in many ways, it's eye-opening to see. It was an experiential trip because as we're there, we're learning about culture, we're learning about poverty, but we're learning about it on location. So we're learning about, it's like when you read a book, you can read a book about Wyoming and you can sit in Louisiana and have a hard time envisioning the mountains and the beauty of what they're describing in Wyoming, or you can learn about poverty and be in the midst of it and see it and experience it. So 12 individuals, Quito, Ecuador, E=H, their focus is on education. Because of the poverty in Ecuador, if individuals don't get an education, and what I mean by an education is just a high school education, they really have very little opportunity other than a common day laborer. And if you're a common day laborer and you get injured, you have no opportunity to provide an income for your work and for your family. If you can't find work, you have no way to feed your family. So what happens many times and very often for the young girls that are not educated, they turn to prostitution. And for the young men that aren't educated, they join the cartels and the gangs. And so it's a terrible cycle. So E=H is focused on educating these kids. So they take people like Danos and Magee and individuals like us that want to sponsor a child. They'll find an organization, a church, and instead of finding the individual children, they'll partner with an established community organization that knows the best way to find these kids and find these families and get them in school. So we spent most of our time with E=H and got to see the work that they're doing, the community organizations that they're partnering with. There was a boys' home for kids that were on the streets and have no place to go, and so they're 18 years old, don't have a formal education, don't have a family. And so it's almost like a halfway house. I don't know how to describe it, but it helps
like a foster home.
Foster
kind
home,
of,
right?
yeah.
It provides them the life skills so they can gain independence and get out of that. So I'll pause and let Renee fill in some more blanks.
I want to add to the E equals H, education equals hope. And so, I mean, I think we all understand, I mean, you at least get your high school diploma, it opens up more opportunities than not. However, the education system there is so very different. What you are entitled to with the education is there's a building, right? So the school building, you have a desk, and you have a teacher. Everything else you pay for. So you can imagine if you don't have much income, you have to pay for the books, you have to pay for your lunch, you have to pay for your school clothes and your shoes and all of that, and that just becomes unattainable for many people. So E equals H helps to provide the necessities so that they can get to school and fully participate. And so I think that it's hard for us to imagine sitting here with everything that we have. If you could just get your child to school, everything else would be okay. They even have that barrier. So that's really a challenge for them. And
if I can interject something, they also provide opportunities for these kids. Many times when their parents leave in the morning, and they leave before daylight and come back after dark. So the kids roam the streets. So E equals H partners with these local organizations. That's why I said that finds the kids, and then they will take these kids after school. They feed them and they help them with schoolwork. It provides a safe space and a safe location for their kids to continue to thrive. Otherwise, they're on the streets, getting into trouble. Our victims, targets, have no way to really further what they're learning in school.
And the kids on the street sometimes are 5, 6 years old, wandering around. So it's really, it's devastating. And we heard a story about some children that ended up at the boys' home that we toured and participated in some activities with, that these children were sleeping in the park, the local park, and they had this large airplane in the park, kind of just a central visual that would draw everyone around. It's really neat. But the children had climbed inside because it was safe in there, and that's where they would sleep. And then during the day, they come out in the park and wander around. I mean,
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, really, really sad. And so there's just so much need there. And like the boys' home is a beautiful way that they're finding these children, identifying them, helping them. E equals H is all a part of that. And so the key is to find the children and get them plugged in to the services that they're offering.
Yeah, and I would say that the trip was a little unique. I referenced this a few times. Oftentimes you think of a short-term mission trip as you're going to serve in the sense that you're going to build a church, you're going to build a school, you're going to build something and leave something. We did a little bit of that, but it was more so to go and see and support E equals H and what they did. We got to go to a couple local churches where it was a church on Sundays and it was a after-school feeding homework clinic every day during the week. We went to the boys' home. So again, I said experiential learning. We were serving by partnering with these organizations and seeing the impact that they're having and learning too. So we had an opportunity to come back with this experience. We painted and helped do a grand opening of a little cafe where they serve coffee to make money to serve these kids and sell secondhand. So lots of those things, but it was really for us. It was more the experience and learning and being in Quito with these organizations, walking around the streets and seeing the people and talk about the meal that we had with the family.
Oh, yeah. So that was one of my favorite experiences, and I'm sure Mark's too. But we were partnered with a family right there in Quito. And after church on Sunday, that family welcomed us into their homes and were going to serve us a meal. But the idea was that we were going to participate in preparing the meal so that we kind of learn how to do things and start to develop that relationship with them. And it was one or two of us in each home, so it wasn't the whole group. So it was a more intimate experience, and you got to have deeper conversations with them. And the home that I went into, it was Maria's home, And she was so proud when we were walking there. I said, are we going to get to help? And this is through a translator because they speak Spanish.
So you're all in different homes?
And
or you're all
I don't. We were in different homes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, wow.
And so I was excited, and I was introducing myself and asking her if we could help prepare the food. And she said, absolutely not. I'm the best cook in town, and my son is a chef. And so, no, we'll be preparing the food, and we're so honored to have you in our home that you're our guest. And they proudly just showed us around their homes, and oh my goodness, they were small. They were built into the side of the mountain. I mean, in the kitchen, the wall didn't quite meet the ceiling, this metal lean-to ceiling. So you can see the dirt behind it. And they were just beaming with pride. And they served us this meal that they had picked vegetables out of their garden. They had cooked this beautiful chicken. And they made us sit down at the table, and they would deliver the food to us, which was just, I mean, it was beautiful. But what I noticed is they had these big plates of food for those of us that were the guests. And for them, they had these tiny plates because they didn't have enough.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And, but just so generous with the limited things that they had, and so full of joy and to serve us. And it was just, I don't know, it was eye-opening of that they had so little, but they had so much, right, inside,
Yeah.
and they were so
Really
full.
gives you some perspective. Thought you were going to tell me that they served you like goat or something that you wouldn't have eaten. So.
Well, let me just offer, I was blessed the whole time that we were in Ecuador to have veggies and chicken, except the last night, and I'll let Mark explain that. But yes, and I was very concerned about what I might be served,
Right.
because one of the things that we learned as we were learning about the people there is that they have so little. So if they do serve you something, it's very generous, and
Right.
they're taking out of their own food supply to feed their families, and so you must eat it.
Right.
So I was prepared. I was prepared to do that, but yeah, I didn't have anything too exotic until that last night. Yeah.
What was the last night?
Yeah. Well, so the last night, let me talk about my meal first.
Okay.
So
I'm going to plan to see where I'm going to come back to that.
my last night, guinea pig. So I'll plan to see. Anyway, where was I?
Your dinner.
Your
after
lunch.
church.
Your lunch
Or
with
your
your
lunch,
family.
My family, the husband and the wife, were uneducated. Just an interesting story. Like everyone has a story, right? So the wife's husband left and basically kidnapped the kids.
Oh, wow.
She had 3 children that she hadn't been in contact with, didn't know because her husband ran off with
terrible.
the kids. So just heartbroken, not educated, really struggling. Found a man that loved her, got remarried. He was a laborer. He hurt his back. He wasn't able to work. So you can imagine the cycle. She worked 7 days a week, 6 to 7. 6 in the morning, she started worked until 7 every night. And on Sundays, so that she could go to church, she started at 4, and they let her off at noon. So she would work 4 till noon. The day that we had the meal, they gave her the day off so that she could serve us. And she said never in her life did she imagine that she would have foreigners, gringos, she called them gringos, in her house to serve a meal to. So I was able to help her prepare and cook, and there were small teams. The team that I was with, we played Uno with the kids, and just had a wonderful time with the family. So very gracious people, really very blessed and very different. The food was wonderful, but a very different environment than we can imagine.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Not typical. So the best meal, the most interesting, memorable meal, maybe I shouldn't say the best meal, was the last day we had. I don't know if it was fried or grilled or broiled guinea pig.
Okay.
So for those of you that have had guinea pigs as pets, I'm sorry to say that they eat them, and we tasted them. Renee didn't, but
did you taste it, Renee?
Mark's face said,
they walked
don't
up
eat
with
it.
this guinea pig that was splayed out like this,
Oh,
and where should we put it? And Renee just turned her head and looked, and they put it in front of me and cut it up in little pieces, and I proceeded to pick up a piece of guinea pig. and a big hunk of fat kind of oozed out. And I'm not a very picky eater. I can eat just about anything other than oysters. That's probably raw oysters. I don't eat raw oysters, but I'll eat anything. And I've had guinea pig before, but once I saw the fat ooze out and the guinea pig and the teeth.
Yeah,
and
seeing it on the platter there.
I'll show you a picture. You can see the teeth.
Oh, no.
Like this.
Yeah.
The head was still on it.
He
and
didn't
the claws
want to go.
were still on it.
Yeah.
You know? And I just couldn't get past it. So I was trying to drink and eat fruit and eat anything to wash the taste and the thought behind it. And Renee was happy to do
He couldn't finish
this.
his regular meal after having a bite of the
that tells you
guinea pig,
something.
so I was like, I'm out.
But it was a good cultural meal.
Yes.
And again, I'm not one to shy away from those sort of things,
Right.
but I struggle with it.
Yes,
That's a tough one to swallow, literally.
But fun
We
experience.
finished that with s'mores outside by a
Yes.
fire, so that was good.
Were you able to have the s'mores?
I did not eat a s'more. I didn't eat for the rest of
You
the
couldn't
day.
even eat the
the
s'mores.
rest of the day.
Oh, man.
I was afraid that anything that I ate wouldn't
Would stay.
in my stomach.
Yeah. Oh.
So there's that. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, Renee was a little concerned about what you might be served, given the fact that you mostly don't eat a lot of meat, right? Just chicken mostly. And
Yeah, and chicken's a little squirrely for me sometimes. I don't eat, but anyway, sorry about the squirrel reference. So yeah, so when I was taken off for Ecuador, I was very concerned about what I was going to eat, and I thought I would be a good sport, but I packed crackers
lots of
and
protein bars.
yes, my bag was full of that. But as we were learning about the culture and the people we were going to meet and the level of poverty, you start to understand that when they offer you food and prepare food for you, how generous that is because they have so little. And, we were strongly encouraged, and I received it well, was that whatever they serve you, you should eat. And, it's probably not cool to say I'm vegan or I'm vegetarian. So you eat what you're served, and I was well prepared to do that. But fortunately for me, it was veggies and chicken the whole time until that last meal, the last day.
Yeah.
And the food was, in general, was very good.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
And Mark, you've traveled abroad a lot, so you've had the opportunity to experience a lot of different foods from a lot of different cultures,
Yes.
shall we
Yes.
say. So that's why this one was particularly interesting, if that was tough
Correct.
for you, because you're used to eating different food and experience that culture, right?
Yes. So in general, I would say that I'm very adventurous in life and in eating. I've had the opportunity to travel and live abroad for many years, whether it was for work or whether it was for missions. I lived for a year doing missions work in the deserts of northern Kenya. And through those travel experiences, I've had lots of opportunities to eat and get exposed to all sorts of interesting things, from anything you can imagine. And that's how I had been previously exposed to guinea pigs and actually enjoyed it, but it was in a dark hut where I couldn't see anything. So that was the difference. When you can see, taste is a sensory experience.
Yeah.
Taste is what you taste, but it's what you smell and what you see.
Yeah.
And so the first time I was in a dark hut and couldn't really see, and it just tasted like meat, right?
Yeah.
Well, this time I could see the teeth, and I could see the ears, and I could see the claws, and the fangs
face.
bared, and it was this thought of, and the fat dripping off, and it was a little too
Every
much to
time he
handle.
says that, it gets me, yeah.
I don't know what I wanted to come back to, and I don't know if it's more of a conversation or what, but Mark, you mentioned how the woman goes to work from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. or something like that every day, and even on Sundays, she's able to go early so she can go to church. Really puts it in perspective when we're to I have the flexibility to work from home here,
Right.
and it's like, gosh, how privileged are we that we are able to not only come to a beautiful office to work, or, wherever our work environment is, we get to, if it's out in the field or it's different, but, there's sometimes we're able to be flexible and we get holidays off and we get vacations and wow, how truly
Right.
blessed we are.
Yeah, I'm glad, Samantha, that you said that. That's perspective. We look at the world around us, the world that we live in, and that's our perspective. And so we compare ourselves to what we see. And oftentimes it's what we don't see that can really open our eyes. And that was what I was referencing a minute ago. This experience, it was a short-term mission trip, short-term journey is what they would call it. And so I said experiential learning. We got to go and see. So then you have that emotional reaction. Now think about life is challenging and difficult here, and it is. We all have our challenges. Everybody has our own unique challenges. But then when you go and you see this woman whose husband is not able to work, so she's more or less a sole provider. And the town of Quito, it's 8,000 feet, 10,000, I think it's 10,000 feet in elevation.
Yeah, right at 10.
Extremely hilly. So to walk from point to point, there's nothing flat. It's up and down, and you're breathing hard. So this little old lady is walking up and down, and she's preparing food to sell on the streets. She's working for so she's spending the day cooking food and working with her hands and working really hard, and she has to do that 7 days a week to provide the basics for her family. And if she doesn't work, her family doesn't eat. And she had 3 kids, as I mentioned, that she doesn't know. She has 3 more kids from being remarried that she's helping. That's how she got connected to Equals H. They're helping her children to get educated. But you're right, perspective, very, very different life than what we know. Their challenges are so different than our challenges. Not to make light of our challenges. We all have challenges. Again, it's all perspective. But challenges are challenges wherever you live in the world. But when you can see life in a different place, it just takes the veil back and opens your perspective to challenges and what we have and what we don't have.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you're right. We enter that experience from our own perspective, our own background and experiences. And one of the great things about this trip is when the training the teacher is that they grounded us in understanding the people we would be working with and not going in from our own background and determining how to solve a problem. Learning what their lives are like, and day in and day out, and meeting them where they are and listening. And instead of, like, just as an example, when we were at church on Sunday and they passed the offering plate, and they said, you know, you're probably going to want to be generous because you're looking around and you think, well, I can be generous. And they said, please don't put a 20, a 10, anything more than $1 in there, because the person sitting next to you cannot do that, and it makes them feel ashamed if you're able to do that. And so it's just little things like that you would think, well, I'm just being generous, but how it's received is very different than what you intend. And so not just going in thinking you have the solution and your approach is best, but let's listen and see how they want to be helped and meet them where they are.
I think that's a good point. And I'll add, we had a session where we talked about poverty. And when we see poverty, we want to help by giving. And sometimes by giving, you have to give in the right way.
Yeah.
We think we're helping, but by helping through giving, we may be enabling, we may be hindering, we may be creating a dependency. So there's a lot of damage that has been done in certain areas, very well intended, but it was done and applied the wrong way. And we learned about that. So you see people in need, you want to help, you want to give a hand out instead of a hand up. How can you give a hand up? How can you pull people out of poverty, change their perspective, help get them out of that? So we spent a lot of time talking about it. It was really eye-opening and insightful for me. Something that, again, I'm going to refer to my notes, but something that I wrote down. It says, as North Americans, we sometimes need to die to logic to see and meet people where they are. So think about that. We see ourselves where we are, but sometimes you need to die to logic. Think, well, that person must have done something, or that person is in that situation because of something that they did. We apply logic, we apply our cultural perspective to the world that we see, and sometimes you have to change your cultural perspective. So that's eye-opening to me. So I'll say it again: in North America, we sometimes need to die to logic to see and meet people where they are. When people feel valued, when people feel valued, they see themselves and the world differently. So how can we meet people where they are? It may not be where we are, it may not be where we think they are, but we see them, we value them, and by valuing people, they can begin to see the world different, and change can happen just in a little way. Like Renee said, you can help by putting $10 in the offering plate. That may not be helpful. It may help, it may be a handout, but it may not be a hand up. So how can you work and partner with people that have needs and meet them where they are? And so that's just learning about poverty and how to respond to people, meeting people where they are, not where we think they need to be or where we see them as where they are.
Absolutely. I'm thinking we're talking about a lot of the differences between us and North Americans and the people that we were so honored to meet in Ecuador. But I want to talk for a minute about the similarities. So, we spent time, I spent time around a table with other women, and they came together to learn from the ladies on this trip about, and there were some gentlemen there as well, about parenting. And they wanted our advice on parenting. And right away, we said, we're all, they're parents as well. You're parents too. We want to learn from you too. And as the conversation unfolded, parenting is parenting. We love our children. We want what's best for them. We have challenges with them not staying focused on their studies or making decisions that we would rather they didn't make. But we love them and we want to guide them. And that's sort of what we coalesced around. And then at the end of it, well, at the beginning, there was just sort of a little bit of awkward silence and somebody would say a little something. And then at the end, we were laughing together and telling stories about things our children have done and what we learned from it. And so I just felt really connected in that way. And it made me maybe see them through different eyes and not just looking and saying how different they are than me, but saying how much we are alike in our souls, right? We're the same. And that was really powerful for me.
Was there a translator, or did they speak some English?
Yes, no, a translator. So it was funny to watch, like you would say something that maybe you thought was a little humorous, and then you would listen to the translator and like his tone or inflection was a little different. It's like, well, I hope he delivered it right. And then
that was funny. Did he get that?
Yeah. And then they would laugh, and it's like, okay, we're on the same page here. So that was good, yeah.
You just have to trust that the delivery.
Exactly, I don't really know.
But I heard from Renee, too, there was some anxiety and some nervousness on her part with going into the home.
Yes.
How am I going to relate to these people? And she was really excited about this parenting thing, but how can I relate to these people? We're approaching these people, right? Mm-hmm. But when you start to break down what you see, I talked about taste is a sensory experience. It's more about taste. It's what you smell and what you see. Mm-hmm. When we judge people by what we see, it's what we see, and we pass judgment. When you can pull that veil or put a veil over and you begin to touch on a meal in a home and see how they live, and sharing a meal and sharing laughter and joy, mm-hmm. and those things that come, it starts to break down barriers, and change starts to happen in your heart. And then Renee, talking about parenting, a mother who's struggling with maybe something similar or similar experience, or dealing with a similar experience, then you have a common bond. You may not look the same. Yeah. The world that you live in may not look the same. Your lives may be totally different, but you have that common experience and you can share that and connect at a heart level. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's when I think about this experience, that's what it was all about. It's going and having this experience. Mm-hmm. You can have some of these experiences in your backyard. You don't have to go around mm-hmm. the world. Yeah. But by getting out of your culture, stepping out for 4 days, we had to put this cultural veil behind us and this perspective of everything that we knew. And we got dropped off into a foreign land, foreign environment, foreign everything. And it really changed our perspective, and it allows your heart to respond in ways that it may not normally, mm-hmm. because you're responding with what you see.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Most memorable thing from the trip, besides the guinea pig?
Oh, gosh, there's so much. Yeah. Well, the lunch was just spectacular. I love that. So I have a couple, can I just, that touched my heart. I can't just limit it to one. So one was when we were sitting around the table at that parenting discussion, and the lady next to me had a little girl. She was probably about 9 months old, touched her shoe, and she would pull it back. And so we played that a little bit. And finally, she would touch me with her shoe and smile. But there was another little girl who was about 2. She came walking around the table, and she put her hand up, and she just stood and held my hand during the whole thing. And I kind of was looking for her parents, and I made eye contact with them, and they smiled and nodded, but we looked very different, and I think she was quite curious, and so
this blonde lady, and
right. So my heart was full, but and then the second thing was we did our lunch. We had that meeting with the with the parents. And then I had really connected with a woman that had a shared experience. And the next day at church, before we went to lunch and all, the next day at church, I'm in there and I'm kind of looking for people I had seen at the luncheon, and she came in and wrapped her arms around me and gave me a big hug. And I think there was just a connect there with her that was really powerful. And then my third and final is as we are in these people's homes, in these beautiful people's homes, we're touring, and they're multi-level. They go up the side of the mountain, and I'm at the top level of Maria's home where we had lunch, and they have some chickens and pets and things that they keep up there, and I look out. And I see, I mean, it's just the most beautiful landscape. It is, I mean, you would pay $1 million for the property here in America. And this is their view. And it was just the difference between how their lives are and just with poverty stricken. And then they have this beautiful view. And it made me think maybe that's why they're full of joy, because they see the balance of it. I mean, they have family and community and love and this beautiful view that God's given them. And that just filled my heart with just like, wow, this is really powerful that this is what they look out to every day. And so I guess maybe that creates some perspective on life. Yeah.
You should realize what's important.
Yeah, exactly. What
about you, Mark?
I'm struggling with that. I'm listening to Renee and thinking I can't think of one. Your question was what's
so
the most impactful, and I can't think of one, but I'll touch on a few. Just the experience there. I love adventure and travel. We talked about that a second ago. So for me, this is really exciting to go and see and experience something different way of life, different people, all of these sort of things. That gives me joy and fills me up. But to do it with, one takeaway would be to do it with a group of people. So there were 12 of us that came together from all over the U.S. Renee and I were the only ones from Louisiana, but we had East Coast, West Coast, northern part. We were south. We had some people from Florida, all over. So all these people, different backgrounds, different ways of life, different parts of the U.S. came together, and we had this experience together, and we had this connection. So it's to have, for me, and my takeaway, and why I'm so excited about doing something like that here, is you take a group of people that don't know each other and you have this experience, and then there's a richness from a relationship standpoint that develops because you have this common shared experience, shared experiential learning. I've said that a second ago. And what else? There are a couple things that I'll have to ponder that for a second. Oh, another one was to think about and see the impact that E=H is having. Very small organization having a very big impact around the world. And it started, I said a second ago, what was my my note about, let me see if I can talk about it. Impact starts, big change starts with the first step. So this was a 21, 22-year-old college grad girl that went on a short-term mission trip to Ecuador. And through there, she built a relationship with some of these kids. She was doing youth work, built a relationship with these kids, and saw that here's a child that just needed some help. I don't remember the story, but didn't have shoes, didn't have a notebook, couldn't go to school. So she helped one, helped another one, had a friend that provided some support. And before she knew it, there were 20 or 30 kids that she was helping.
Wow.
And she was overwhelmed. How do I do this? There's 20 or 30 kids that are depending on me to go to school. And from a dependency standpoint, it doesn't cost a lot. It's a lot to them. It's not a whole lot for us. And so her vision and her heart. And then she had an American partner, maybe went on a short-term trip and said, I can help you with this, and helped put some infrastructure in place. And before she knew it, she was able to take a big heart for these people. And now she's in 5 or 6 or 7 different countries. Distributing millions of dollars to put kids through school. And she has a heart, and she's still in Ecuador. So she built this organization, and she wants to be boots on the ground. So she has a team in the U.S. that's doing the behind the scenes administrative work, because her heart is right there. So when you think, who am I? What can I do? I'm a 22-year-old college girl living in a foreign country, not married. What kind of impact can I have? And here she is 15, 20 years later, millions of dollars a year, impacting hundreds, if not thousands of kids' lives through the years. And so for me, that's big impact starts with a small step. She took a small step. She was faithful and available and was willing to go and stay, and that's where her heart is. And now she's married an Ecuadorian, and she's got kids that she's raising there, and so she's bicultural, right? She's bridging the gap and trying to bridge the gap with her kids that are growing up in Ecuador. She's got an American connection, but to think of the impact that she had, because she was willing to get overwhelmed and ask for help, but continue, and we had an opportunity to go and see this impact that she has had. So that's
amazing work.
Challenging to me.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Makes me feel a little underachieving, but you know.
Exactly, right? One step.
But the impact starts with who's right in front of you. I have a note in here about that too.
One step. What's the next
it's
step?
It's one step.
Yes.
But we often think too, we look at people that are having a big impact and we think, I want to do that, or I wish I could do that.
Yeah, I want to start there.
It's often, I wish I had what they have so that I could have that impact. It doesn't matter what they have. It's the person in front of you that you have an opportunity to impact.
Yes.
And if you can impact that one person right in front of you, then the next person, and who knows what can happen. And that's, what's her name?
Cameron.
Cameron. So that's what Cameron did. It was that one child that needed shoes or needed a pencil or needed something. And then it was another child, and 15 and 30 and 100. And it's thousands now. So it was that one child, and she didn't have any special skills or gifting. We all have special skills and gifting. It was the fact that she was there. It was that one child, and it grew from there 15 or 20 years later. Look at the impact that she's having.
Yeah.
So you're right, Samantha. I often think, I wish I could do that. But what is that? That is what somebody else is doing because of their skills and giftings and abilities. What we have is right here, right in front of us. What can I do with this right in front of me? That
exactly.
Small step. Being faithful with what's in front of me.
I love that. We look forward to seeing what 2025 holds.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity
More to come.
share about our experience.
More to come. Just planting little seeds.
Planting seeds.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Renee and I have to process.
Yes.
Well, speaking of seeds, right? When you think about a seed, it starts with the seed, and then you have growth, and eventually, when you have growth, you see fruit, and that was our takeaway.
Yeah.
The challenge for us is we come back, and the fruit will come in time.
Yes.
This is part of it. Is telling our story. The next part is planning a trip and doing something internal within the Danos organization.
Absolutely.
Renee said that at the beginning. I'll echo that. I'm certainly motivated and challenged and inspired. What's the next step? I hope to see fruit in time. It starts with a seed today. This is the seed that we're planting. It's talking about it. And we'll see fruit in time, over time.
Over time, yeah.
And I'm anxious to see and excited to see what that looks like.
Me too.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, y'all. That's a wrap.
That's it for this episode of Producing Confidence. To learn more about the Danos family of companies, be sure to follow us on social media. Remember, stay safe, stay connected, and keep producing confidence.